Good morning and welcome to everyone that gets to watch us either live or as the replay. Today, for the Pajamas and the Coffee Society, I wanted to say PJ&C and came out wrong. PJ&C crew, we wanted to talk about imposter syndrome. And I wanted to talk about this because this, to me, is something that comes up so incredibly frequently when it comes to, um, I would say, newer entrepreneurs. But that's the misconception that I want to talk about. It isn't for brand new entrepreneurs, it's for all entrepreneurs, for all individuals, in fact. And why this is so important to talk about is we think that once we've hit a certain level, that we're free of it. We think that there's this magic day that will appear on our calendars, and all of a sudden, we've got it all together. And so I am here to talk about the truth of the matter, that it never goes away, that it's never free and clear, and it's never going to be completely gone. So instead of taking the completely negative route that it sounds like I'm taking, why I'm saying it that way is simple. If we can accept it and we can understand it, then we can handle it. That's how, at least, it always works for me. So I hope this is helpful for others out there. Imposter syndrome is something that I seem to talk about a lot, like I said, especially with very young entrepreneurs. In fact, earlier this week, I spoke to somebody, or last week, I think it was, I spoke to a very young entrepreneur. He's within the first 6 months of being an entrepreneur. Good morning to you, Julie. Thank you for showing up and supporting us. Um, and this young entrepreneur was kind of at that moment where the dopamine high wore off and the reality is setting in for him. Not that it's a bad thing, it's a rite of passage. However, the imposter syndrome part is kicking in. Spoke to a second entrepreneur last week that is incredibly talented, incredibly successful, probably more than she sees herself, which is a very normal thing to do when you're trying so hard to build. And she kept saying, I'm struggling, I'm doing these things. However, I don't know what it is. And what we were able to settle on was it was a bit of imposter syndrome. And that's why I wanted to dispel the myth that it goes away. And again, this is not a negative connotation. This is not a negative conversation. Why I bring it up that way is simple. I apologize. I'm still getting over being sick. So if I'm coughing and sneezing at all, please forgive me ahead of time. Imposter syndrome becomes something that you have to recognize just like any other bad habit. And you have to put in safety systems, mechanism, a saying, a phrase, whatever it may be, to recognize it and then to handle it and move forward. And the best example, and I apologize, she's just the first one I can come to mind. There's probably way better examples out there, but the woman that started the company Spanx. I was a couple months, probably 6 months ago, watched a TikTok with her speaking about safety measures, speaking about her current position in life and all that she has accomplished. And the one thing that she decided to talk about was imposter syndrome, that she still had to deal with it. And I thought it was a great example. So I would encourage you to go into her TikToks and watch some of them, because she talks about how the fact that she went for 3 years wearing a t-shirt that she ironed letters on that said Spanx to get the company out there and to start the company. Huge, enormous effort. She didn't give up no matter what anybody said. And as she did this and as she was going through that process, she was so motivated. However, this has been 10, 15, 20 years? I don't even know later. And she said, point blank, it's something that we all still have to deal with. Again, from my own viewpoint, being an entrepreneur for 20 years, when I start a big, scary project that may require me to stretch my knowledge, to learn new things, to do things that I haven't done before, any of those categories, imposter syndrome is a very normal, real place to land. It's just kind of it's that whisper in our ear, whatever it may be, saying, am I really ready for this? Can I handle it? Am I qualified? Are they going to figure out that I'm not the person? It doesn't go away. So if we look at it from that viewpoint, then we can, as Lee nicely quoted or added, put in safety measures. I actually have some notes that I want to share, and this is from my notes that I share regularly when I do coaching on this subject. And I wrote down, has imposter syndrome become a catch-all for I can't? I have a story, and it's a very silly story. And I have shared it with my children, and I share it once in a while. I think I've shared it with my boyfriend. And it is my story of when I stopped myself and said I couldn't. And I still use this to this day mentally when I need to get past imposter syndrome. I was probably about 12 or 13 at the time. My family used to, my family and several other families used to go every summer up to Lake Michigan to an area called St. Joe's, Michigan. And I used to go there as a child. Every year we stayed at the same hotel, jumped into the same pool, grilled out behind it because it was this kind of old motel, but they had updated it. But it was the coolest pool. Love it still to this day. I've taken my children there. We still go back. Anyways, I was jumping in the pool with my two best friends, and we were all 1 year apart in age. And their dad was in the pool, and he made the comment for us to try and dive through the middle of the pool float. Can't remember what color it was. I just know it was a pool float. And they did. In my head, I was the oldest, I was the tallest. I couldn't do it because I was bigger. They could do it because they were smaller. And this actually ruined my trip for me, which I know is absolutely silly now as an adult. But at the time, as a child, it actually ruined my experience. And I realized I was the one that stopped me. Nobody else could talk me into it. And I had determined I couldn't do it, so I didn't do it. And then I literally mulled this over and fixated the entire trip. And it actually ruined my trip. And I still remember standing there as a child, Uncle Pat telling me to jump through the pool float, and I could not do it. So that is for me a perfect example in my own life of how I did allow imposter syndrome. Now, I know I'm being a bit dramatic, but it serves the purpose of the point that it was something I had decided in my head I wasn't capable of without even trying. And I probably could have done it. And now, to this day, I wish I had, just to prove it to myself. So I didn't have this story, but here we are. So I believe, though, too, that there has been this thing that has happened in our society of overperforming, overachieving from day one. Now, I do believe everybody can stretch further. I believe that we can all work harder, and I believe we can prove to ourselves what we're capable of. That's actually not what I'm speaking about. What I'm talking about is the very beginning, the first steps to trying anything new. Okay, so we're just talking about that. And if we talk about just the beginning, just those first few steps, well, at what point in society did we all of a sudden start beginner shaming? When did we decide as a culture that it's not okay to be a beginner at anything? I disagree. I believe being humble and saying, I'm new at this. Can you help me? I'm new at this. Give me some time, whatever it may be, is a beautiful thing. And it is the only way that we improve as who we are as people or in with our careers, our companies, whatever it may be. So I feel like the conditioning that we should already know everything needs to be kind of altered and also addressed. And we need to realize that other people in our circle and our lives, when they start something new, they are a beginner, give them some time. This does include starting a new business. This is something that I see a lot. I actually encourage a lot of entrepreneurs we work with to wait a couple of months before you start really explaining it to the people that you're closest to, not being evasive, not lying. But for example, when I started my company that I had started right before Grit and King, it was called Grit Idea Studio. Ernesto it was called Kingfinity Marketing. Therefore, we combined and became Grit and King. And when we did that, though, I will tell you, when I first decided to retire from my old career shut down my company, went back to school, and started Grit Idea Studio, I intentionally did not even talk to anybody that I loved or that loved me about it for several months. Not until I had a website built, not until I was pursuing clients, not until it was a real thing. I did this because I was protecting it and I felt like I didn't want anybody talking me out of it or altering my dream. That's the way I handle it. Is it the correct way? I don't know, but that's what I did. Let's see here. I agree. Yes, education is a part of the journey, and that's exactly my point. We need to stop shaming beginners for trying new things as a society. And I am not trying to pick on anybody here. I'm just stating it as a fact that we need to embrace beginners. We need to embrace people that are willing to try new things. And that includes within our own personal circle. If we have people that are in our own personal circle that we absolutely love, give them the grace to try things out. We need to not think of it as a bad thing. You know, as children, for example, we're encouraged to become a ballerina one day and a fireman the next day and build Legos and then go out and paint whatever. Why don't we still have that attitude towards adults? There is no reason that education needs to stop. And therefore, we could encourage others to not even have to worry about having imposter syndrome, in my opinion. Okay. So, one of the things that I wanted to talk about before I was done is one of my notes, and I'm laughing at myself because I believe, and this is something I talk about when I coach about it, is that imposter syndrome is kind of a dirty word and it's rooted in negative self-talk. It's a label that we use to shame ourselves for being a beginner, for not knowing everything, and for being imperfect at the start. And that is my thing that I try to hand out as advice when I'm talking to a young entrepreneur, to remember that it's just a dirty word and it's rooted in negativity, and that we need to understand that that label of using it as an actual label, that it's a shame technique for ourselves, and we've all done it to ourselves. So that one of the other things I'd like to talk about with beginners or young entrepreneurs in this situation is that I try to remind them that every successful person that we look up to, was once a beginner. Every single one of them. I like to use the example of like Alex and Layla Hermosi, are a perfect example. It took them over 3 years for their company to begin to become successful. So if we believe that we're going to be successful day one, silly enough as this may sound, do we believe that we're smarter than the most successful people that have been in business? No, they all started out as entrepreneurs, solo entrepreneurs, and worked their way through the ranks to grow their company. Never happens overnight. There is absolutely no overnight success. It is all long-term dedication to success. So we need to just throw away that imposter syndrome as a bad thing. Now, that is, how do we identify it, right? But what do we do when it lands? So I hadn't even taken a sip of my coffee today, so I apologize. I'm going to be drinking coffee today. What do we do when it lands? Well, I'm going to give you my scenario of identifying it internally, and then how do we deal with it. I like to use this example, and I will never be participating in this example. You'll understand in a moment why I explain it that way. If you decided to become the next champion of rock climbing, I don't even know what the correct term would be. You want to climb Mount Everest. There we go. And you decide that is your bucket list. You want to climb Mount Everest. So you get a plane ticket, you go to Mount Everest, and you look up and you go, whoa, I don't know what I'm doing. I should go home. I can't do this. Imposter syndrome. Absolutely imposter syndrome. Whereas if we take the correct steps, there's probably modifications in your diet you need to start doing maybe a year ahead of time. You have to probably participate in a lot of activities like extreme exercising, endurance training, physical alterations to your body. They're finding the right equipment, breaking in the right equipment, learning how to manage and care for your equipment, caring for your body in extreme cold conditions. And just even saying that sounds absolutely awful to me, by the way. Um, all of those things have to be done while you're in beginner status. However, I thought I could cut the line and I'm just going to go to Mount Everest and start climbing. How successful is that going to be? It's not going to be successful at all. But yet, for some reason, when imposter syndrome strikes, we think that's why we're doing it incorrectly because we tried to skip the line. It's never going to happen. Ever, ever, ever. So what do? We prepare. We need more education. We need to make sure we have the right equipment. We have to make sure that we're treating our personal lives correctly. Oh, wait, hold on. Am I talking about going up a mountain or building a business? There's the key. Same steps, different outcomes. One's all about physical endurance, one's about mental endurance and building a company. Yes, but these steps are the same. It's all about preparation. So when imposter syndrome strikes, I like to go back and think, what did I not do? What have I not prepared for? There's something I didn't prepare myself for. There's something I'm doubting. So what is it? It's probably education. It's probably knowledge. It's probably whatever it may be. But that is a great place to start in handling it. The other thing that I always advise for younger entrepreneurs is that we always need to remember it's going to strike and we have to be ready for it. So when it strikes, we can handle it. It's a part of the process. So I would encourage anybody that is listening to this the next time it does strike, because it will, it always will. You imagine climbing a mountain and you think, okay, if I'm going to climb the mountain, what do I need to climb that mountain today? Put in those safety measures, as Alethea said, to have the systems in place that are going to get you through it. Because it's not if it strikes, it's when. It's a guarantee. We all go through it. I do as well. However, I recognize now there's something missing. There's something I need to handle. And most of the time, that does the trick. If it doesn't, next step, reach out to somebody that you completely trust that does not demolish your dreams, and somebody that you can know to count on for the let the Wookiee win kind of conversation, as my dad would say. The person that's like, everything's going good. Look at what you've accomplished. We all need that person to be a part of our process too. For me, that would be Alethea or my boyfriend Ernesto. Those are the two closest people I have in the world, and they've been on this journey with me in our business. They completely believe in our mission. They completely believe in our passion and my passion, and they're willing to follow what we are doing here. So I know without a doubt they've got my back. So I know that those are the first two people I can call. Then I can call some of my mentors. We all should have that team of people that are going to give us tough love us first, of course, but tough love, that are going to say, you know what, it's time for you to get back up. It's time for you to say, I've accomplished so much already. Please understand, after 20 years, I still have to go through it. All of us do. But understand, it is beatable. It isn't a thing to make us stop, and it isn't a thing to define us. You just have to recognize that we've all chose a different path up the mountain. And when we are climbing that mountain, there has to be the right steps in place. And I'm laughing because the idea of me climbing up a mountain just hit me, and I went, absolutely not. So if anybody does not want to join me on that mountain, that is okay. I will be on the beach. That is absolutely going to happen. So that's the way I handle imposter syndrome. Well, that's all I wanted to talk about today. Thank you so much for anybody that caught this live and anybody that catches it as a replay. We are going to be expanding. I haven't even talked to Lee about this, and we're going to be expanding how many places that our live is going out every week. So if you are on other platforms, we will keep you up to date about that. And we would love to have everybody support us. Please understand, too, we are going to be reaching out. I know Lee reached out to a lot of the new members, just said hello and just kind of said, here we are if you want to network with us. But I would encourage anybody that has not responded to do that. The reason being is networking is everything when it comes to building your business, and you have no clue how close you could be to somebody that you need to actually fill a need within your company, or again, your personal team, for the days that imposter syndrome strikes. So network, use this group to network, use this group to be able to find your people, find your tribe, and make sure that you're participating too. This is a great group to get involved on our lives, our podcast episodes. We have several amazing podcast episodes coming up very, very soon. So please make sure you're watching for all that. Make sure you watch for the weekly spotlight that should be out either today or tomorrow. And then on Friday, Alethea and I are back live Friday morning to have another roundtable discussion about being an entrepreneur. So please get involved as much as you can and as much as you feel comfortable with. But please use this group for what it is. It is not your average group where everybody just sells things in a group. That's never been our intention. As we do gain speed throughout the year, we will be talking about some retreats. That is literally our mission within this group, to talk about some retreats that we're going to be offering for female entrepreneurs to be able to work on their business strategy together. So that is it. That is the entire look behind the curtain of what PJ&C is all about. So we encourage everybody to get involved. Please reach out to Alethea or myself if you want to be involved with a live on a Friday or a podcast episode or both. So have a wonderful, wonderful day. It is really cold in Texas for Texas standards. It's supposed to potentially get colder. I'm not buying into that. I'm sorry. I cannot believe that. I really don't want to believe that it could get colder here. So I'm going to stay inside and take a ton of meetings today. And then we will be back Friday morning. And one last thing I want to say is, if anybody has a suggestion of something they'd like us to talk about in the future, please suggest, because we're always open to suggestions as well. Lee, you have a great day as well. And thank you so much to everybody that joined us, either live or in the replay. And we'll be back on Friday. Have a great day.